Imagine making over $16,000 in 1 month, only within a few months of starting your business. That's exactly what my guest here, Taylor, did. So you may have seen her on a previous video testimonial slash interview. So she was one of our first ones in linked permanent jewelry training, and now I'm bringing her back on. Due to high demand, because everybody wants to know what her secret sauce is. So we're bringing her back on to kind of give like a 4 month update, because you started what, Taylor, about 4 months ago?
Yes, October 1st is my official event, and I think the training started, like, mid-September.
Awesome. So I'm sure a lot of the viewers may have seen, your previous testimonial where you're like, I think you had like 15 bookings your first week and stuff. So, give us an update since then, the past, 3 or 4 months. How's it been going?
It's been going really well. I started with one company, one local business, and I had one event there, and it was almost like all the other local businesses were starting to host holiday events and knew they wanted to have the permanent jewelry there.
Mhm.
So I feel like I was kind of fortunate in a sense. Basically, word of mouth has been the best thing.
That's awesome. So, of course, to get
Mhm.
word of mouth, you have to get customers. So, what tips do you have for our audience or students on, how you find events and where you really, plan those out?
So I initially reached out to one of my friends who owns a salon, and she was all about me being her first, or her being my first opportunity to have an event. I had no idea what to expect. I've obviously never done this before. Of course, I had thoughts, "Oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. Nobody knows about this." Negative thoughts, and I just put those aside, and I tried to have confidence, and I just went into the event, and I acted like I knew what I was doing, even though I was freaking out on the inside, and it ended up being a success. I don't remember exactly what I made that first event, but I remember thinking, if this is how this is going to be, then I'm excited.
That's awesome. And so, as far as like your background goes, did you have any prior business experience or prior jewelry experience or welding experience?
Absolutely not on the business or welding. I was a former hairdresser, so I kind of know how to talk to people and take care of people. And I felt like it carried over really well into this
Yeah.
business.
Awesome. So, I mean, as far as like the business aspect goes, I mean, what are your thoughts behind someone who doesn't have business experience? Because you kind of said you didn't really.
I kind of think it has a lot to do with personality. I'm a go getter. I feel like I need
Hmm.
to figure it out on my own. And that's basically what I did. I tried not to let, like I said earlier, no negative thoughts, just being persistent and figuring it out because I had the confidence of taking care of people. And plus, I knew it was a trending thing, the permanent jewelry. And I wanted to take that and run with it.
Awesome. So, you're a mother of two, is that correct?
Yes.
So, how's the dynamic between trying to, run your own permanent jewelry business and being a mom?
That's one of my favorite things about doing this is I can literally make my own schedule. My husband runs his own business, and so I have to work around that too. That might be a little bit harder than working around my kids, but I'm able to set up these events when it works with my schedule, and it's a huge blessing because the amount of money I get to make in such a short amount of time.
And so, a lot of people at the beginning of the video probably, caught the fact that I said 16,000 or over $16,000 in 1 month. And so, for someone who doesn't really understand permanent jewelry or the business aspect of it, like, how do you make 16,000 in a month?
Well, events mostly. I like to push my private parties. I feel like there's always a guarantee to have a certain amount of people at that party. And
Mm.
so, plus, it's more personable, a lot less stressful. You're not having all these people waiting on you. But the events are fun because they get me out into the community. And that's how I meet these people to do the private parties.
You said it's mainly events. And so, for a typical event, what has been your average income?
Average about $1,500. And these events only last anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. I never really go over 4 hours, unless, of course, it's a private party.
Mhm.
But I book every 15 minutes. I don't need 15 minutes for one person, even if they get multiples. And I don't panic about how many people are waiting, or I just know that I'm going to get to them. I try to have a communication with them where they know it's going to be just a second, but I'm going to get to you. People just want to be taken care of,
Yeah.
and I think that if you can do that, then you're going to be successful, no matter how long you spend doing it.
I loved how you mentioned, negative thoughts, because that's what I see every day is people like, well, I'm scared it's not going to work out. I'm scared I'm not going to make my money back. And, just having all these fears and doubts. And I'm sure a lot of you watching or listening to this right now probably have some fears or doubts, whether you've already signed up for the training or maybe you're a student and you're just having self doubt. So whenever you feel, Taylor, that you have self doubt, and fears, like how do you get over that?
The end result, what I know I want from this experience or this process, and that is really what drives me, to be successful. I wanna be successful in whatever I do, even if it's anything in life,
Yeah.
and I just feel like with permanent jewelry, it's almost like a quick fix for that feeling, and I know what I want that end result to be, so that kind
Yeah.
of allows me to push those negative thoughts out.
Yeah, and I mean, I have the same fears and doubts myself all the time. And, for me, whenever I feel that encroaching on me, because I think as humans, we all have a negativity bias. That's just how our brains are wired because we are always looking for, like, oh, where's the next saber-toothed tiger going to eat us? That, from our ancestors. But, fortunately today we don't have saber-toothed tigers chasing us. And so we've got to get rid of that negativity bias. And so, for me personally, I try to think of like, okay, if I don't make this decision and I'm sitting here and I'm 80 years old, am I going to look back and say like, wow, I wish I had tried that? Like, I wonder what if, how is that going to feel versus if I do try it and, maybe I make some mistakes along the way, maybe I have some failures, but at the end of the day, I still know I tried and I gave it my best. Which feeling is better? Obviously, trying is better. And so for those of you who are on the fence, I can tell you that you don't make money sitting on the fence. Like either, commit or not, but like don't be afraid of making mistakes. We all make mistakes. That's how we learn. So speaking of mistakes, like, have you made any like that you were like, okay, like I learned from that, this is something that for maybe a new permanent jewelry artist, you would like to say, like, watch out for this or like, don't do this.
Someone told me a long time ago that mistakes are learned. Mistakes are how you learn. So if you're not making mistakes, you're never going to learn and you're never going to grow and you're never going to get better at what you are making the mistakes on. And I've always had that in the back of my head with everything I do, especially with the permanent jewelry. If you've never welded a day in your life, you're going to make a million mistakes. Um, I almost like to try to figure things out on my own so I could mess up and be like, oh, well, that didn't work. Instead of waiting
Mhm.
on somebody to tell me, you don't need to do this because you'll mess up. I would rather like figure it out on my own. I don't know. I just encourage anyone who wants to start out doing permanent jewelry to understand there's going to be mistakes made, but you're also going to learn from that. And if you do make a mistake, you can't just give up. I feel like I've kind of seen a lot of people wanting to just give up because they make one mistake or something doesn't work right the first time they try. I was going to
Yeah.
say, if your kids were messing up, you're not going to sit there and tell them, well, just don't try, just give up. And I just see so much of that. And I just think everyone needs to understand that you're going to mess up, but you're also going to learn from that. That's all.
Yeah, you bring out a really deep point that I heard. I think it was Ed Milet that said this on stage last year, but he was talking about how he was talking to this lady and she was really on the verge of giving up and stuff, and not really doing what she wants and listening to the fears and stuff. And this can be for guys or girls. This was just the example he used, and then she was like, well, I'm going to tell my kids they can be whatever they want and then do whatever they want and have follow their dreams. And he said, well, why aren't you? And so that really hit deep on me because we are all here, whether you have kids or not, but for especially for people who have kids or just people watching you, your friends, families, colleagues, you know you can set an example of like, hey, like, you don't have to be perfect, but at least try. Like, at least go out and like do something with your life. Don't just live in fear and never take action. And so, always think about like, especially if you have kids, what example are you setting for them? We're not just here living for ourselves. We're setting examples and stuff. And how are we going to tell our kids they can do whatever they want if we're just going to sit here and never take action?
I always say fake it till you make it. Just pretend you have confidence if you don't.
I know we've been very deep, so let's switch gears and go to the fun
Let's not
parts
do that.
of, of permanent jewelry. So, what are some of your fondest and most fun memories you've had, the past few months with permanent jewelry?
Like I said, doing events have been really fun getting out into the community, but I'll go back to the private parties. That's where I ultimately feel like I build better relationships with people in the community. My favorite thing to do is probably the little kids because they get the most excited. And then if their mom wants to do it with them or they have a little best friend, I love to see the excitement that people get when they get the jewelry. So I think really I like to get dressed up and go to these events anyway. So that's enough for me to be able to get dressed and then go take care of people and then make people happy. And it's just really cool, especially since I'm able to do all that on my own schedule.
Yeah, that's
So,
awesome. So, what's the environment like at a typical event? You mentioned private parties. Can you give us some examples?
mhm. So my first private party, which I will never forget because it was my first one, it was a bridal shower, and all the bridesmaids surprised the bride. with an anklet. But they all got matching bracelets to go with her matching anklet, and
Nice.
so that was really fun. They had, a whole table of delicious foods, and they had this cute little backdrop, and they did fresh pressed juice mimosas, which I thought that was really cool. So they
Yeah.
set the bar really high for these events, and I try to encourage people who wanna do private events to kinda do something like that. Whether you're just offering finger foods or mimosas always seem to be a hit. Even at the events, they're always I don't know. And if your party isn't doing something fun like that, or your event isn't doing something fun like that, I think it would be really cool to recommend that. So you're kind of adding value to their party or event too. I just try to make sure that it's going to be fun for everyone involved.
I think with the past few years, a lot of people have been on lockdown and not really been able to socialize as much as they want. And so, I think this is a great, not only is Permanent Joy really hot right now, it's recently featured on Netflix, but it's also, just a great chance to socialize and build that human connection back again that we've all been missing so much. And it's very, easy to sell. It's low risk. Like, obviously, like I've got 4 bracelets, but if somebody like is scared that it's going to be permanent, like you can always tell them, well, if you get tired of it, just cut it off. We can always put a clasp on it. So, like, as far as like sales and upping your profits and stuff, like upselling, what tips do you have for the viewers? Do you have any kind of like script you kind of follow?
Yes, especially if it's their first time getting one. I always mention, now this isn't going to be the only one you're going to want. You're going to want
Yeah.
more. It's very addicting. And it really is true. And there's usually always somebody who already has more than one in the crowd or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, you might as well go ahead and get two while you're here."
Yeah.
Just talking about it and get putting it in their head that they're going to want more, even if they don't get it that day. Because I've had a lot of repeat customers because I told them that it was gonna be addicting, and they come back to me and they're like, "You're right, it's addicting. I want
That's
more." So,
Yeah, it really is addicting. Like I didn't care about jewelry that much my whole life, and then when I started doing these, I was like, "Wow, this is cool." I feel like on a psychological level, it's like I don't have any tattoos. Like I'm scared that I would change my mind and stuff. So I feel like this is like kind of on the same psychological level where it's like permanent, and so it's kind of cool
yeah,
and unique. But then at the end of the day, if I get tired of it, I can cut it off, and so there's not that much risk either, or no risk.
people do, kind of panic. People that don't know about it, they will panic about it being permanent, but I love having the opportunity to talk to them about what it actually is, and then they're always like, "Oh, okay," and then it kinda makes them more interested. You'll probably run into that too if you don't already.
So for those, watching that are maybe on the fence, so they're thinking like, well, this sounds really good. $16,000 a month sounds really good. What would you tell people that are just, scared to make that initial investment?
Don't be scared. Just do it. If you're thinking about doing it, and you don't do it, you're always gonna regret not doing it. If you're thinking about doing it and you do it, you're gonna be glad that you did. I would like to hear of people that tried it and didn't like it and see, like, what their feedback is and why, and then because I feel like I could probably talk them back into starting it again. It's I don't know why you wouldn't do it.
Yeah. I think it's just like anything else where people kind of get in their own head. And if they get frustrated, kind of like we talked about, and it kind of like tugs on those insecurities, it's just because it's not something that you instantly learn like, in 1 second. Like that's the whole point of the online training program and our support program because there can be challenges. There can be like you get frustrated because you made a mistake. But that's why we have our support team.
Yes, which is amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you. As far as marketing goes, like, did you feel like the marketing content that I taught on the course, was helpful?
Yeah, for sure. But you have to be willing to use it.
That's
You
true.
can't just watch it and then wait for it to happen. You have to be willing to do it.
Yep. It's just like fitness. You can watch as many fitness and diet videos as you want, but until you actually take action, nothing's going to happen.
And it's hard to take that step.
Well, I know it's always hard to take the first step, but now that you've been doing this about 4 months, do you find it like easier and easier every time you do it?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. So that was for people who are on the fence. Now for the students who are already watching, or even permanent jewelry artists who are watching, who are not necessarily linked students, join linked.
Definitely.
Um, what let's say that they're kind of feeling frustrated, or they're not making enough money that they thought they would. They're like, well, 16,000. I don't know how you make that. Like, what's your advice to them on like next steps where they can really improve their situation?
Kind of what I've been saying. You have to just to just put yourself out there. You can't just expect things to come to you. If you try it one way and it doesn't work, there's other ways that you can try. For instance, if you reach out to someone over DM and they don't respond, go in person. I've taken those cookies that are really popular
Yeah.
that they're like the ice sugar cookies or whatever. Those are really popular, and I've ordered some of those with my logo on them, and I've taken them to local businesses or just friends who have allowed me to host a party, just to kind of stay engaged as like a thank you.
Hmm.
You have to put yourself out there, and that can sometimes be the scariest thing. But the worst thing they're going to do is say no.
Yeah.
If you can just mentally prepare yourself, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to say no.
Right.
Um,
Especially with cookies.
I just
It's hard to say no to cookies.
definitely.
Awesome. I love that idea. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your experience and,
You're welcome.
tips and advice for all of our viewers. And, if they want to follow you and see like, okay, what's an Instagram look like of somebody who can make over 16,000 a month? What's your Instagram?
It's it's kind of long, but it's at loyaladornment.permjewelry, and I'm probably not as active on there as I should be. But I have gotten a lot of events through social media, so
Perfect.
it
Well, all right.
works. It works even if you're not real active.
If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments what your favorite piece of advice was or what insight you got. And of course, reach out to Taylor and tell her thank you and follow her on Instagram. Anyways, thanks again, Taylor. And,
You're
obviously we'll
welcome.
be in touch because you're in the linked community.
Yep.
Alrighty, bye.